Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the all-new AVS Podcast. My name is Hia Nejami Das, and I'm joined by Ojas Ayapilla. We are your hosts for this episode. The AVS Podcast is an all-new student-led initiative that seeks to give voice to the AVS community.
I'm really excited for this episode, Hia Nejami. With your last episode being on the topic of founders, this episode is going to be on a very relevant topic, which is going to be board exam pressure.
Wait. Aren't we all class 11s? We have no board exams. Why are we hosting a whole podcast on this?
Well, we did have our board exams last year, although the coronavirus pandemic severely affected the examinations. But that didn't stop Utkarsh Jajodia, our first guest of the day, from topping the ICSE examinations with a whopping 98.2%.
He's been consistently at the top of our batch academically and has a plethora of red ties. Maybe he can tell us some tips on how to handle the pressure of the all-important board exams. God knows I need it.
I feel that the best way to reduce stress is by giving your mind some rest and doing something that you love. Most people listen to music, some read storybooks, and the most popular one out here in our community is taking a break and having a chit chat with your friends, which obviously becomes endless, and then you start talking the entire night and end up stressing again because you're unprepared. We should keep in mind that balance too. I should also like to add here that the most important thing which anyone giving an exam is needing is sleep. So we shouldn't sacrifice that, and a fresh mind and a stress-free mind would lead to a good examination.
Those were some very wise words, Utkarsh. Now, my next question is, how do you prepare for the board exams themselves?
According to me, performance is based on preparedness. Just like you can't expect to go to a cricket match and play well without any performance, same way is with academics. The more consistent you are, the more regularly you study, the better marks you get. What I have observed in the AVS community is that 90% of the aviators would have a study routine, but then just 1% of them actually follow it. So just making one doesn't work. You actually have to follow it, and that's what will give you a good result and a satisfactory year.
Thank you for those words and your mere presence, Utkarsh. It was a truly inspiring moment to hear from a topper of toppers. Now, moving from one topper to another, we have Samrat Gupta from Lohit House to speak to us about this topic.
I feel there is nothing to be scared about in terms of board examination. It's just like any other examination. And about the pressure, I'm no different than any other. So everybody has pressure. Even I have pressure. I face pressure in my exam times. But the best way to deal with it is like just go with the flow and not taking too much stress. And yes, people might get offended with that, not taking too much stress. But I feel doing some physical activities in the afternoon or in the evening really gets the stress out of my mind and really helps me focus in the coming time which I have to study, and I have to give my 100% in that. So basically, we need to not clog our minds with something which is generally here the pressure of the so-called board examinations, and just to take it lightly and not think about the result. Just only focus about the input which we are giving in right now.
Now, the next question is, how do you maintain such high levels of performance in the exams and not get burnout?
See, I don't study for scoring marks. I study for knowledge and for my inner self. But maintaining all good levels of performance is no big deal, because if you have one thing focused, which is like gaining knowledge and not only running after marks, you'll eventually end up scoring well and not scoring less, because your mind will be focused on things like, no, I don't have to study for getting marks, I have to study for myself. And that's the thing which really matters. And maintaining performance, yeah, I think there is some kind of so-called pressure from the other people, because they have all seen you at the top. And if you just go sliding down the lane, questions will be raised at you, but you have to just deal with it and overcome it.
Those were some wonderful words by Samrat Gupta. A topper truly speaks topper stuff. We have another guest from Lohit House this time. His name is Kavya Neel Kalita, and he is an event management prefect of the school. Kavya, being in the senior most batch, what advice can you give to the juniors regarding boards?
Advice regarding boards? Well, I'm surprised this question is thrown at me. I'm not really the scholar type and not the typical person one would seek academic advice from. So let me try to give an average student's perspective, because everyone else would probably give the topper's perspective. The thing is, exams, no matter how much they suck, are inevitable part of us students' life. So when something is inevitable, I believe it's best to embrace it rather than sulk about it. Even if you're feeling underprepared, which most are, to be honest, you can just speak to yourself constantly that stress is gonna take away from whatever little I have. So why to think about how many pages are still left in the book and rather fortify the pages that you have already been covered. And we can proceed from there, right? It's not try to bite more than what we can swallow. Set your target. It might be an 80 or 90 or 70 for that matter. Go through various practice papers and try observe and pattern or repetition of it. It's not much difficult to see that a plan can be made to achieve the target that you have set. That is the easy part. The deal is to stick to the plan and execute it. Learning to say no to temptations and enjoyable activities while you're on that mission. To sum it up, just work with a plan, study with a plan, because burning the midnight oil without a properly chalked out plan is just labor. And who the heck wants to do that, right? And juniors, chill, it's no big deal. Whatever you score enjoying what you study and learn is gonna come good later somewhere.
That's some good advice right there. Now, my next question is for you, Kavya. How do you deal with your parents' expectations for your board marks?
Well, I'm relatively a new guy on campus, but yeah, experience of having appeared and crossed the hurdle of one board exam is what I have, if that counts for anything. It was a different board though. One thing is, it appears larger than what it really is. It's some kind of hype and that gets to you. A lot of bright students crumble under the pressure. Of course, home environment plays a massive role in your personality, and your personality decides how to handle pressure. I would say I have been quite lucky in this regard, as my home environment have been relatively pressureless. Of course, they expect and want you to do well, but in today's time, it's more for yourself rather than anyone else. I have lived with my parents up until class 10, and thanks to COVID, most of my 11th and 12th as well. So communication with parents came as a default setup for me. But I realize a lot of you have been living away from home for quite some years and from an early age. So I would say communicate with your parents, bridge the gap between their expectations and your aspirations. Let them know who you actually are and let them know what your plans are. The better the communication channel establishes, the lesser those gaps get. Maybe that will help dealing with the pressure of expectations, as we say.
So listeners, that was Kavya Neil for you.
Before we move on to the next guest, let's take a breather with some relaxing guitar from one of the school's best guitar artists, Jaskirat Singh. Well, that was a wonderful interlude by Jaskirat Singh. You certainly listened to the quality of his music.
Now we have another guest, Bishal Kumar De, an avid sports person from Lohit House. Bishal, being so into the field of sports, how do you balance sports and studies?
Being into so much into sports and studies, like you should just maintain your normal routine which school provides you, right? So like just attend classes, pay attention to it, and like during your sports time take it seriously, because like physical activity is really required for your health.
Truly insightful words. But my question now to you is, how do you improve on previous exam results?
Upon my previous exam results, like I have tasted failure, so I know what's the pain of it. So I just was focusing a lot on my academics as I knew that I had to work hard because my results were not that good and my parents were expecting a lot from me. Even my teachers, they helped me a lot and guided me to the point where I was really proud of myself that I achieved a really good result in my previous board exams of my class 10th.
Wow, even I couldn't think of such words.
Maybe you're not as intelligent or as creative as you think you are.
No need to be so truthful out here.
The next guest for this podcast is none other than Sir Moses Hendrick, the head of the Special Education Needs Center or SEN Center of the school. He is an imperative and critical part of the education program at AVS, and so he is an important voice in this topic. We are honored to have Sir as a guest on this podcast. Sir, what are your tips to students who get anxious and stressed during exams?
When we talk about stress, it is divided into three categories: good stress, bad stress, and ugly stress. When we define stress, it is a sense of concentration we feel when we faced with a new or any challenging situations. So that situation is when it's exam stress, we think about it, it's a good stress. It helps you to focus, it helps you to get motivated for your future, it energized you, you want to achieve something in your life. But whereas when you think about the bad stress, it is a tension or anxiety or a depression or anger you develop because you are not able to cope with the situation. Another stress is there, ugly stress. This is totally lack of energy because you lost all your confidence about yourself. So the only way to get away from stress is that there are 4 activities which you can do. 1, please do exercise regularly. Exercise is very important. Number 2, deep breathing. Number 4, if you have any hobbies, you work on that. Number 4, the meditation. When you do this thing, the negative stress, what we call the negative stress, like bad and ugly stress, can be able to cope with.
Well spoken, sir. However, what are your tips for underperforming students?
The question is about how to help the underperforming students. I can call it as a coping mechanism with study. There are 5 suggestions I can give. One is practice improves retention and performance. It's called rehearsal principle. Number 2, deciding what to study. What is important? Teachers help you, guide you, and show you what can be read according to your ability to cope with. And the third one is you have to choose your place where to study. You may be a person who would like to study in a calm and quiet place. Assam Valley School has got a wonderful place to sit and study. There are calm and quiet places out there. It will help you to concentrate and enhance your attention. And the fourth one is when you have to study. Many times, children, when you want to playtime you try to study. Don't do that. Playing improves your memory. There are a lot of theories to support it. Please choose the time. It's very important. And you have to understand that why do you want to study? It will help you to understand that the purpose of your life, what life you are going to have in the future. In all these things, once you understand, there is a department called Special Education Needs Center. It's a resource center. You can come and take the help from the person sitting over there. He can help you how to understand, comprehend, memorize the things. I can give you a simple principle called SQ3R. I repeat, SQ3R. S means survey, Q means questioning, other 3R means reading, recite and write, and review. If you can practice this skill, and definitely will be able to cope with your exams and do well.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable time. Now we have our final guest of the day. Our guest is Ma'am Maushmi Talukdar, and she is a critical part of the Special Education Needs Center of the Assam Valley School. She has a big heart and an even bigger smile, and every student in the school values her presence. Ma'am, what would you say to a student that has difficulties in learning and is scared of the all-important board exams?
Thank you. A very good question. With regard to children who have learning difficulties, this can be due to emotional issues, sensory issues, or cognitive issues. The learning is affected and hence gives rise to fear or anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety is nothing but fear of the future. It's not in the present. Now, what can be done? A systematic assessment, analysis, and programming by the special educator in the SEN center will help the student cope with the board exams.
Thank you, ma'am, for those words. How would you advise students who have not performed well in the board exam and are fearful of the scorn of the people around them?
There are two things in life: live for ourselves, live for others. Successful people have one thing in common: they have undergone a lot of ridicule, scorn, and shame. In spite of that, they rise above and emerge victorious. They take it as a challenge to prove to themselves and not to anybody else. In the Assam Valley School, we have a facility called the Special Educational Needs Center, where children can come for the required help and resurrect themselves. This facility is available for all, irrespective of whether a child has a learning difficulty or not. Additionally, we also provide parent support and counseling to help parents be proactive towards their children's learning needs.
Wisely spoken, ma'am.
With that, we conclude the podcast.
And in case we don't see you,
Good afternoon
good evening.
and good night.